100% English?
Okay. Well, that's easy because we were actually trying to make the Catalanian subtitles, but we didn't make it on time. And so basically, the story is of the Second World War, and we took three most painful subjects for that region. It's a Holocaust. It starts with a Jewish story. It's a Holocaust, and then it's Ukrainian underground movement resistance against the first German and then the Soviet occupation. And then the third one is the Polish-Ukrainian war during the Second World War. Why these three subjects are very painful? Because all three nations have different perspective of what happened. And before that, there was never anything that would put all three perspectives into one film. And we were, I think, the first. And in order why we did it, because we wanted the people from the other side, so to say, to see the other people's pain. And we thought maybe that, even though it's a history, it's 70 years ago, but still the memories are so painful for those three nations, it's hard to find the common language about these events. And if we succeeded or not, we will find from you after you will watch the film. And I just want to say that actually you will find a lot relevant to your history and also your personal life in those stories.
Ok, doncs si us sembla, ja saben, no acaba de fer unes presentacions, tots coneixeu una mica la regió segurament, d'Ucraïna Occidental totalment. Anem a veure el film i després ja podem parlar una miqueta de la pel·lícula i si voleu una mica de tema que vostè ha fet.
But then by pure accident, I went to the Unim monastery when Aaron Weiss was telling his story for the very first time. And I got so fascinated, and I was also so shocked that I didn't know anything about the Holocaust at the time. And Holocaust in Galicia. And so this was my eye-opener. And then I decided if I want really, as a Ukrainian patriot, if you live on land and you know that other people live there, you have to know their stories. And that's how I started, and then I decided, well, then Polish part needs to be included too. And that's how it went through all these three. And all of them have a different story how we found them. It just, I don't know, sometimes I guess when you try to do something good with a good heart, it just comes to you. Because Ola also, I found her by pure accident.
Is she famous now?
No, not at all.
Ukraine?
She lives in an apartment maybe like this big. Like there's only one bed, and she has a big library, so she walks like this to her bed, and that's it.
Not a hero.
Not a hero. And now in Ukraine, the history is controversial again. So everyone tries to stay away, and it's such a pity that people like her are not recognized. There are some people that are recognized, but they are not recognized for like human beings, like some kind of people who didn't do anything wrong and she was I think she's a hero. She sacrificed everything, and no, she's not recognized.
Issues are still very controversial.
Yes, yes.
Even in Ukraine.
Yes.
Because, well, their fight was desperate. They had no chance at all. And of course, they did some kind of terroristic movements. So everybody was against them. Yeah? So the official history has been very, very tough with them. Polish history too. And Ukrainian also, and Russian, of course. So, and now it's emerging that, well, not everything was bad, as it's told in the last story.
Yes.
It's very focused.
Yes, and that's because her friends, two other women, I think they were the longest political prisoners in the world. There's one more in South Asia, yeah, or in China. But they spent actually 25 years. They spent 25, she was I think 14 or 15. But they both, Katerina Zaretska and Helena, they said that they're not going to sign any documents no matter what. And Katerina gave away her child too. And they decided that somebody has to stay to the end. And they were actually women, and men usually didn't do that thing. But these two women, you know, and Olya, and they stayed to the end.
And I would dare to say that they were some of the very few real political prisoners.
Yes.
Who were against the Soviet Union.
Yes.
Because in the Gulag, most of the people were
not
there just because, and not because of political. Exactly.
But see, that's worse. They were not in Gulag. They were in the prison that was in Gulag, right? There was a prison. They didn't have time to, they had no, because in Gulag, at least it's a concentration camp, you can go and have fresh air. They were strict, so because they didn't want these four women, because they didn't want to, you know, to give in, they were not put in Gulag. Gulag for them would be great. You know, they had to stay in the confined, you know, prison. And as she said, the first year, I mean, for the first 5 years, I think they were only allowed to write one letter a year and receive one letter a year, and they were not allowed to watch to see themselves in the reflection in the mirror. So she saw her first in the mirror, I think, in like 7 years after she'd been in prison. It was very tough. I mean, forget about reading, writing, no.
More questions?
I just wanted to say about the problem as well of gender, because actually women never in history this thing, you know, show up actually. It happened exactly the same with the Jewish fighters. You never know who are women, and
that's a very good point.
I think it's something related to, because for instance the ghetto uprising in Warsaw was a women who started, and nobody knows about it. So I think it's more about gender thing as well.
That's very good, because actually, okay, then we will combine, I didn't go into the detail about how we found the oil. So we went to the celebration of Shukiewicz 100 years ago, you know. And I just went there by accident, right? So, and I was sitting and people were talking about those people who knew Shukiewicz, right? That Shukiewicz was the head of the party. Well, and everyone is like asking, you know, how did you know Shukiewicz? And everyone is listening. And then Olya stands up and she says, yes, and Shukiewicz, and you know, I was with him in the same house, but then my children were taken away from me. And they're like, no, we're not interested in your children. So tell us about Shukiewicz, you know, and then one more time, she's like, here's my son. I didn't see him. And the whole, you know, this whole like very patriotic crowd wouldn't care less. You know, it's just that the mindset was like on this heroic figure, and you were only important because you spent the year with him, you know, covering him up. And that's how I found her, because when everyone left, I actually went and asked her, so what happened to your children? And then that's how I learned the story. And this is the first time that she tells the story, because before that, nobody cared. And you're right, there was so, because as one of, you know, as I said, 300 hours interview, so there were a lot of people. And there was one person that I interviewed about the Ukrainian-Polish conflict, and I asked her, how was it? She said, you know what, men had it all right. They would run to the forest, and if they got killed, they got killed. We had to stay in the house, protect ourselves, protect our property, and protect our kids. So tell me who had it tougher. So that's what she said. And take the food to the men, to the poor.
I am very happy to see this film because I have a little house near the city. Yes. Oh. So I was looking this film because I know something, not at all, but this story is very strong. And my neighbor, for example, is a friend.
Really?
And the friends of mine are Polish people living in Germany. So it's very interesting. I read by the film because young people, for example, this neighbor has 3 their cities.
Stop.
And I was invited to the group, no,
To the wedding.
So they are one Polish and she is Italian, and they are always telling, yes, it's question of generation, pokolenie, because after that, perhaps they will resume more and it's really.
But I would say this is a very brave film. It's very courageous because maybe you saw it, you may think this is another history film about the Central Europe, the Nazis, the Soviets, and so on. But we have to think this film was made in Ukraine, and these topics are still very difficult there. It's not that this is the past, older generation, no. It's still a very difficult story about that.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask about the reception of the movie. How was the reaction about it? You know, it's interesting because young people laugh almost in the same places, right? So when in Spanish, I always come to the third part to see the people's reaction because I think it's very funny. They didn't laugh at the soap opera. You know, it was like a straight side when there's an exchange. It was like so interesting. So the tension, and then like in Spanish, and then we were asking questions afterwards, and people were not very open. And only after screening they came and said, it's still not very stable here. So some.
Cambridge is very, very strong.
So it was just so, and they would not ask questions because they, especially the minorities, because Poles are majority in that city. So the minority, and it was another thing that somebody was introducing and saying, well, this one is an architect. Oh, and this is a Jew. It was like a profession.